Today, the incredible CPI Numberwang. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, the Australian Bureau of Statistics has annually reweighted the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, and the Selected Living Cost Indices, the SLCIs, since 2018, predominantly using Household Financial Consumption Expenditure data. Annually, reweighting the CPI ensures that the CPI basket continues to be representative of spending by Australian households, they say, and last week they published the proposed changes to the index. The 2021 reweight will apply from the December 2021 quarter, and the CPI will be released on the 25th of January 2022, and the SLCIs will be released on the 2nd of February 2022. But I have a massive problem with their whole methodology and approach, and I want to argue today that this is pure number wanging. Typically, household spending patterns change gradually, they say. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a sudden and now sustained shift in spending patterns. An example of the change in spending is a shift away from spending on services towards higher spending on goods, and that is reflected in the 2021 CPI weight update, with the weight for goods increasing to 58% of the CPI compared to 53% of the CPI in 2019. The weight reference period refers to the period for which expenditure data is used to update the CPI weights. In response to the shift in spending, the weight reference period for the 2021 annual CPI reweight is the most recent financial year, 20 to 21. Now that's a change from the previous annual weight updates, when the weight reference period was typically lagged by 18 months. Under the previous approach, this would have meant using expenditure data from 2019-20 financial year for the 2021 updates, but spending patterns in 2019-20 were considered unrepresentative for the purpose of reweighting the CPI because they were impacted by the national lockdown and related events such as pandemic buying in supermarkets. Therefore, expenditure data from 2021 financial year has been used for the 2021 weight update. Though, of course, through 2021, people still were influenced very much by the pandemic. The main data source to the update is the HFCE data. Other data sources such as supermarket scan data and retail trade data provides a more detailed breakdown compared to the HFCE data. Where this is the case, such as for food, those data sources are used to split the aggregate HFCE data to update the weights in the CPI. They added a new data source for the 21 update relating to childcare. Administrative data from the Department of Education, Skills and Employment replaced the ABS's 2015-16 Household Expenditure Survey data. The 2021 weight for childcare of 0.91% compares to the 2019 pre-COVID weight of 1.17%. Updated weights for some of the components of the CPI and SLCIs are derived from alternative data sources. Those include new dwelling purchases by owner-occupiers, other financial services, and mortgage interest charges, which, by the way, is only included in the SLCIs, not in the CPI. The CPI and the SLCI weights reflect the relative expenditure of the CPI population group and the SLCI population subgroup as a whole. The weights reflect average expenditure of households and not the expenditure of an average household, and that's quite important actually. One thing to note when comparing the weights between 2020 and 21 is that the weights are relative. The weight of a component of the CPI depends on how expenditure on that component compares to total expenditure. In other words, we're talking about expenditure shares here, rather than the absolute change in expenditure. For the 2021 CPI weight update, the largest weight remains for the housing group at 23.24%, followed by food and non-alcoholic beverages at 16.76% and transport at 10.58%. The food and non-alcoholic beverages group, which was down 0.59 percentage points, saw small falls in weights across most supermarket food categories. Last year's higher weight was influenced by increased spending on food at supermarkets during the initial stages of the COVID-19 outbreak, which saw food stockpiling and more people eating home-cooked meals. The weight for takeaway meals was up 0.1 percentage points, while the weight for restaurant meals was down slightly 0.05 percentage points. That was because of the shift away from restaurant dining to eating at home. The fall in the weight for the housing group, which was down 0.81 percentage points across Australia, is due to rents dropping 0.57 percentage points, and that reflects increased vacancy rates and lower rental prices in Sydney and Melbourne. There was also a shift towards owner-occupied housing, with the weight for new dwellings increasing 0.18 percentage points. The weight for electricity was down 0.28 percentage points due to lower prices in a number of capital cities. And changes in housing group weights differed across the capital cities. They dropped the weighting the most in Sydney, down 1.17%, while there was a rise in Darwin, up 1.54%, and Canberra, up 0.36%. Now, this, of course, is nonsense, because while it may reflect the movements in net rentals, it fails completely to account for the larger costs of housing, thanks to the massive price rises and bigger mortgages in the eastern states over the past year. Housing costs are a rental proxy and out of whack with the costs of many. The weight for furnishings, household equipment and services were up 0.4 percentage points due to strong demand for household goods, particularly furniture, up 0.25 percentage points. And the weight for childcare of 0.91% was lower than the 2019 pre-COVID weight of 1.71%. The updated weight replaces the previous estimates based on earlier ABS data surveys. Of course, though, last year childcare costs were lower as more worked from home, and there was also more government support. And the weight for transport was up 0.39 percentage points, and that increased due to a higher number of vehicles sold, combined with higher prices, which increased the weight for motor vehicles up 0.61 percentage points, and higher fuel prices increased the weight for automotive fuel up 0.12 percentage points. This, of course, understates the most significant recent rises in fuel costs. And the insurance and financial services weight, up 0.67%, saw an increase due to higher real estate activity, which increased the weight for taxes on transfers, stamp duty in other words, and that's reflected in the increase in the weight for other financial services, up 0.69 percentage points. So the essence of this analysis shows the basis for the reported CPI is highly skewed, partly thanks to the removal of housing finance from the series. Remember, the RBA pushed for this change some years ago, and other obvious errors. No surprise then that the CPI is on average understated. The question is by how much? Now that's a complex task to try to recompute the true CPI, and it depends on both the methodology you choose to use and the baseline assumptions. However, my quick back-of-the-envelope estimate for the true CPI in Australia is that it's running closer to 7% at the moment, which, by the way, means the RBA has taken interest rates way too low and have inflated housing to the max. So standing back, this approach to the CPI is another pure case of numberwanging. But the consequences are very severe in terms of it misleads and misdirects financial monetary policy from both the Treasury and from the Reserve Bank. And of course, it also continues to bump home prices higher because of low interest rates. Unfortunately, the basis on which many of these decisions are being taken are highly inaccurate and artificial. And because it's artificial to the downside, what it actually means in practice is that we are paying a lot more than we should be for many items. And of course, it also explains once again the low interest rates and the housing boom, as we discussed the other day. But of course, as I said the other day, central banks need to keep house prices higher, because if they go weaker, that's going to blow up the GDP number. CPI is a pure numberwang. Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au, and if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.